Unboxing Careers. Welcome, everyone, to the Unboxing Careers podcast, the show dedicated to discovering what careers are actually like. I'm your host, Greg Zakowicz, and on today's episode, we dive into the world of HR with Regina Sheridan, Executive Vice President of People and Culture at Libra Group. Regina, welcome to the show. Thanks for being here.
Well, thanks for having me.
It's going to be fun. We were talking offline just, 5 seconds ago. I'm in this HR, recruiting, PR type world right now. So hopefully something's top of mind for me as we get into here. But let's do a little level setting here. Tell us about your current role, and then also what type of company Libra Group is and what you guys do there, so everyone kind of has a basic understanding here.
Yeah, awesome. So Libra Group is a private family-owned company. We operate internationally, so we span over 60 countries, and we have 20 subsidiaries. We operate in 6 different sectors, so it's a big organization, which makes it super interesting. And my role at the company is leading the people and culture team, and I really enjoy my role a lot because it's not traditional HR, at least what I thought of HR when I was in high school or in college. I see it as much more of a modern take on HR. So it's really about kind of combining like the strategy and connecting the dots to the people of the organization. And really, this is not just like in my role, but really like part of the company's mission is about unlocking and tapping into the potential of our people. So that's really at the core of what I do.
So when I think of traditional HR, I think of person sitting there, they go out, they try to recruit, they hire, they go through the paperwork process to onboard people. You said it's kind of a break from that. So can you walk us through a little bit about what quote unquote people and culture mean, but also about your role and how that navigates? And I'm sure we'll get into some of the specifics here a bit later, but just from a high level.
So, I mean, it's definitely about talent acquisition and onboarding, and that, that lifespan of the employee, but we're also taking into account the culture side of things. And so how I see the culture of a company is like the character of the people in the organization, right? Like, how do we act, not just when people are looking, but when behind closed doors? And so part of what I do and what really motivates me a lot is helping turn our values and our culture into a business asset, right? So how do we bake in our values into day-to-day operations, into how we make decisions, into how we treat people? And so I think that's where that culture piece comes in. And then you kind of, it also entails a lot of like the people operation stuff, like you mentioned, like the hiring, the recruiting, that kind of piece to it.
Very good. And we'll get into some of the specifics. So if anyone's unfamiliar, still a little cloudy, we'll get into exactly what that means here in a few minutes. Got to ask you this, HR, is this a direction you wanted to go into from a business side as a kid? When did you kind of get the high level umbrella term HR bug? Like, when did you decide you wanted to do this with your career?
Yeah. Definitely not something I discovered about myself until much later on in life. When I was younger, I think I actually started college pre-med, which is really funny to think about now. But I think what I did is I started really listening to like my intuition and following strengths that I thought I had and the people told me I had, and interests. And so that led me into a bunch of different careers, really. I did teaching for a few years. I worked in several startups. I was in client management. And I had never really thought about HR until you kind of look back. And in hindsight, you're like, oh, I really enjoy team building. I really enjoy working with people and engaging with employees. I really enjoy coaching and mentoring. And so you kind of pick up on those patterns over time. And that's, following and then using my approach of like following that gut instinct kind of like naturally opened up opportunities for me, and led me to my role today. And so now it's always easy to like look back in hindsight and think like, oh, why didn't I think of that? But all of those different experiences, I think, have like added to the strengths I have now in the role, and And it's something that I'm really excited to do every day, and can really not just help shape people's futures and careers, but also like the direction of an organization, because you're working towards like the collective success of the company too.
Makes a lot of sense. So I want to dig into this. If you're okay with it, I want to dig into kind of your progression here, because I think it's really important, but I also think it's extremely common for, I don't want to say most people, but for a large majority of people who are trying to navigate their career. I think, by the way, if you were in high school and told someone you wanted to go into HR as a career, I think most people work in HR do not go into HR. Like, they don't say, "Oh, I want to go into HR." Like, I probably get guided somewhere else. All right, so you started college as pre-med.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a doctor? Like, are your parents doctors? Do you have doctors that are close in the family?
Yes, lots of doctors in the family.
Okay,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
so that makes sense. Going to pre-med, how long were you doing that before you kind of had this intuition and be like, I'm not sure this is really the thing?
Sorry, I had like dual tracks, right? I was studying like international relations and languages simultaneously, and then also pre-med track for the first like couple years until I finally decided to lay that one to rest.
Okay, so when you switched out of that, what did you go with? Did you lean into your other studies, so the international languages, international? Okay, so you went into that, and then from there, we don't have to go through like your total resume, but from there, were you geared on, hey, I'm going to go into business, I'm going to go into teaching, I'm going to go into, what was the career path at that point?
Yeah. So I did not know. What I was doing was following classes that really interested me. I was part of like different organizations. I tried to do a lot of different experiences, things that just interest me, and where I thought I could add value, but I didn't really know how to like mold that into a career. And so what I did and what I would recommend, this is what I advise a lot of like our younger, our interns and young people that I speak to, is to like do a lot of different things and kind of start slowly narrowing down and identifying what you enjoy. And so a lot of like the volunteer opportunities I had, and like opportunities outside of the classroom too, kind of led me into my first role, which was teaching. So I taught high school for a few years.
Okay. And then when you got into, again, I'm going to use this umbrella or bubble term of HR, but when you got into that role, what type of company were you at, and what were you doing in that company that allowed you to pivot into that particular area?
So when I've actually been with Libra Group for a very long time, kind of like the broader ecosystem. I'm now at the parent company, but as I mentioned before, it has 20 different subsidiaries, and it has a lot of other like philanthropic initiatives. And so I've always had this interest for education and international affairs. And so I was working for one of the nonprofits that's related to the broader ecosystem. And I started as an intern myself. So that was many, many, many years ago. And I was getting my graduate degree simultaneously. And then they brought me on full time at the nonprofit. And I stayed there for many years. And in that role, I was executive director at a startup nonprofit. So what you do is everything. You're like, oh, I need to build an accounting system. I need to staff the team. I need to, all these different components of building an organization. And one of them was, there's a big HR leadership focus, and a lot of the people in our organization were very young. We were all under 30. So I think that's where kind of my natural interest in like professional development and mentorship and like team building kind of first, started coming out. And then, so that was kind of like my first role within the broader ecosystem. And then after that, there was this opportunity for leading people in culture that came on later on. And I think that they thought of me because of those strengths, and also because I understood the importance they placed on the philanthropic side, which really kind of boils down to like our values and where we place our priorities.
Very good. And you make that transition, and you're right. If you work for a nonprofit, you pretty much describe the role of a CEO, right? You kind of do everything that needs to be done there. So I would say just chuck that on your resume as well.
Perfect.
So you get that kind of transition. You figure out, hey, I start to like this here. So like, how does that take you to where you are now? Now let's get into some of your specifics of your day-to-day job. So you said you've been working with Libra. at least from a contextual side, for a long time. So was the nonprofit part of that organization, or was that just a easy pivot from there into the Libra
It's a
Corporation?
separate organization, but still kind of under the broader informal umbrella that we have. The company I
Okay.
work for now is the founding sponsor of that nonprofit. So there's definitely like connection and what we call our ecosystem.
Okay.
So it was a natural place where I had just built relationships across, in different circumstances, being able to build relationships across the ecosystem. And that's where that opportunity came up.
Perfect. So now you're in your current role.
Yeah.
Walk us through. This is going to be different based on probably the week, the time of year, but from a general sense, try to walk us through like what a typical day and week look like from you.
Yeah.
What are your high level priorities? There are maybe short term and then long term ones. Obviously, company health, culture, stuff like that. But walk us through. Try to get us a sense of what you're actually doing on a day to day and
What
week to
does it
week,
look
if you
like?
could.
Yes. And you're
Yeah.
right. It's hard because no 2 weeks look the same. It's one of the things I love about this job. I like things that are fast paced and I like things that change and keep me challenged. And this role definitely does that. So I would say that we kind of have like the things that stay kind of constant, consistent throughout the year, right? You're talking about team check-ins, managing payroll things, setting up professional developments. And then we also kind of operate kind of quarterly, I would say. It's a little bit seasonal. So one quarter, we may be really focused on internship recruitment. Another quarter, I may be really focused on planning our team annual gathering where the whole team comes together. And then now, like at the end of the year, it's really focused on benefit renewals and planning for next year and performance conversations and making sure I'm checking in with all the team managers to, make sure they're setting goals and hosting their one-on-ones and that sort of thing. So there's definitely no one day or week that looks the same. Maybe a good like sample week, I will be kind of coordinating gatherings or interactions for our different team members because they're located in different locations. So I like to bring people together. I might be reviewing the employee handbook with in conjunction with a different department. I might be doing a lot of interviews for candidates. I might be rolling out like a new workshop or training. So a lot of what I do is very people engagement. And I do have like 3 to 5 like recurring weekly meetings where I'm checking in with different departments. Maybe it's accounting, maybe it's governance, maybe it's communications. So it's a lot of like cross-departmental conversations too. But so that's just kind of like a sample week. And then I have, like some of my favorite weeks of the year. We have when our interns start. So we have 2 orientation weeks, one from our spring cohort and one from our summer cohort. And it's just really great because I can like solely focus on that project for that week. We recruit from all over the world. So we bring in interns from like Greece, Armenia, Kenya, Colombia, and they all come together in New York. And we do a lot of team building. We do a lot of professional development. And then my colleagues and I really design this very focused and intense week for them where they get to hear directly from all the different executives that we have in our ecosystem. So not just at the parent company, but also someone from our aviation company, someone from our real estate company, someone from our shipping company. And it's a really open, like ask me anything Q&A style. And so they walk away that week like having learned so much, grown so much, and really gained a lot of like confidence and understanding about the business by the time they leave and actually go start their internship. So that's just one of my favorite weeks of the year.
That's awesome. You mentioned a few things that I want to get into, and I'm going to forget 90% of those by the time we actually get to them. So my apologies, but hopefully we get to them. You mentioned, well, before I get to that, walk us through your KPI. So like, how are you evaluated? So obviously if you guys are hiring for a role, and I don't want to speak for you, but if you're hiring for a role, right, the obvious thing is, did we hire someone? Did we hire the right person? And probably how quickly do we hire? Can you expedite that time between, a job rec to hire? But like, how are you evaluated on, quarterly, yearly basis? Like, what are your metrics that your boss is looking at you for?
Yeah. So I think it goes back at least at Libra, we're very value centric. So I think it goes back to those values and how I apply that in the context of people and culture. So one, we are very entrepreneurial. We have a very like strong learning mindset at the company. So one of the things I would say that we're looking at is like how much are we developing our people? How much time are people putting into taking new courses or going on different experiential learnings? It might be a trip to one of our other businesses or being part of a delegation on one of the executive trips. So I would say like training, development, time that's dedicated to that, I think is one metric. The other one I would say is a focus on like leadership development. I would say that's something else that's linked to our values. We believe strongly that leadership counts in, at all levels of the organization. And so how much time are we putting towards developing our managers, our team leads to ensure that they're helping their teams grow, right? Because you have a strong manager, you're probably going to have a strong team there. And how much then I think retention is also another really good metric. We have a very low turnover rate. And I think that is a strong signal that people are happy within the organization, right? Like they're not leaving Libra to go elsewhere because they're very happy where they are. If they do leave the organization, oftentimes it's to go to one of our subsidiaries or someone within our broader ecosystem to still kind of like part of the family, right? And that happens a lot. And we see that as a success because they're taking the knowledge that they've learned here and applying it at one of our other companies, or vice versa. They've come from a subsidiary and moved up to the parent company. So I would say those are probably some of our bigger metrics that we keep an eye on. And then again, we try to tie everything back to the values of the organization.
And then this question might not be relevant at all based on professional development. A lot of companies will have professional development, but it can be like budgeted the person. So, hey, Greg, we'll give you a 400 a year or whatever to do professional development, but you choose with manager approval kind of what you want to focus on. I'm assuming it's probably fairly typical, but if there's company-wide or department-wide trainings or professional development or just programs of some sort, if you guys do those, how do you know that those are successful? Like, what is the metric? Because it's really not, it's more organizational. So you can't look at me like, hey, did Greg get promoted or did he get better evals after doing this? And apply that skill. So is there a way to kind of figure out maybe less quantifiable things, whether programs are working that align with the culture of companies? Does that make sense at all the way I asked that?
Yeah. So you're asking how, if there's a company-wide training, how do we measure the success of that?
Training, program, initiative, anything like that maybe is less quantifiable because it's spread out across the organization.
Yeah. Maybe that's one that could, like, the success could be seen like in the longer term, right? Like how much engagement did we have with it? Were people interested in it? Was this driven by the employee interest? Like, were they the ones suggesting it? That's something that my colleagues and I try to do is we host what we call like listening tours, right? And we have the benefit of being a smaller organization of about 40 people, right? So I can have an individual relationship and connection with everyone on the team. If it's a larger organization, it's a little bit different. But we go around and we have you just casually call, check in, ask how people are doing, kind of ask them. We'll do informal surveys about things. And so we'll let that guide the topics and the direction of those trainings a lot of the time. And then we'll see like how many people engaged, how many people asked for like a second session. Did we expand upon it in the following year? So I think that kind of shows the engagement level and interest level from the employees' feedback we're getting from them. And then there are some that are like more like technical trainings, right? Like everyone is required to do like their cybersecurity trainings. And right. I think just good metric of that is making sure people completed it and are aware of what these things mean and that sort of thing.
Best videos ever, by the way, cybersecurity training. Okay, so let's pivot away from that a little bit if you can. And thank you for the answers. So someone maybe is interested in going into this field and say, okay, I like team building. I like working across different departments. I like, professional development. kind of the
Mhm.
same things you mentioned here, and they want to get into it. What would you advise from? I want to take it from two approaches. One, like, what is the path through college that you might recommend, or if you had to do it over
Mhm.
again, how would you do it if you would do anything differently? And then two, when you start working, entry level job to kind of where you're at now, like, what's that typical career progression look like, and what should people expect?
Yeah. So if it were me, I don't think I would do anything differently, right? I think my experiences have led me to where I am today, right? It's because of those experiences. Now, I can't speak for everyone, right? It can depend. Um, but what I would say is, yeah, if you think you have an interest in HR, maybe take a couple classes, just learn a little bit more about it. Maybe some general like business classes, some leadership development, some organizational psychology, I think would be really valuable, that kind of thing. But I think more than anything, the advice I would give people is more outside the classroom, right? So, like pushing yourself to get in front of as many different audiences of people as possible. Um, I think having a good understanding of how people operate and react is key to this role. And so, being able to be in different types of scenarios and interact with different types of people, understand different perspectives. That's all really valuable. You're not going to. The only way to do that is through different experiences, right? So
Yeah.
I remember, like, even when I was young in high school, like I worked in retail. Customer service is a great way to learn how to, manage people. I was a teacher, another great experience, and client management. Working for a startup in client management for traders on Wall Street. So after you've kind of like dealt with like high school students in an inner city setting and then worked with a lot of like bankers and traders, you're like, I think I can handle most people. I think I know how to handle myself in these situations. So I think just putting yourself out there, getting, we talked about this before the call, getting internships, getting volunteer experiences, club experiences, leadership positions. I think all of that is going to be the best preparation for this type of role.
More well behaved high school students, bankers.
High school students for sure. Yeah.
You're gonna say that. Very good. We love you, bankers, right? Okay, and then let's talk, if we can, just for a second about career advancement. So entry level, what should someone really look at from an entry level position to getting into the general field? And then what's that typical advancement maybe look like? Do you find you moving from company to company quite often? Is it a little more of we retain talent because
Mhm.
we invested in them? Walk us through, if you can, from a high level, what a typical career advancement might look like in this field.
Yeah. So I think entry level, I think if you can get into an entry level role where you can own like a project or a program that is like under the broader HR umbrella, it's a really good like foot in the door, right? So um, we've had our internship program is one of the initiatives, one of my favorite initiatives that I get to work on. But it's a lot of work, right? So we often have young people helping us with executing on that program, and I think that's a good way for them to be able to step in and understand, like, okay, how are they applying? How are they taking like these big picture values and applying them to like this one program? How are we taking lessons learned from this one program and applying them like on a broader scope? And how are you like running something on the ground? So I think kind of having that first step, owning or supporting on like an initial program, and then thinking that is like a good first step so that you can think about how then do you like start scaling that up and thinking like bigger picture. And then in terms of advancement, again, I can only speak from my own experience,
Sure.
and say that we look to retain good people, right? So we want to keep good people. Now, what we do a lot is like reshape roles or move around or be creative, depending on the company's needs and the strengths of the person. But that might not be the case at another organization. So in some cases, it may make sense to move around to different companies and pick up those experiences along the way. But I think once then you get to moving forward, or you're aiming to move forward within this space, I think there's some key things that you should focus on developing. And I think it goes back to like kind of what we talked about before, like having that high EQ. Practically, what does like good decision making look like in this space? How do you improve upon like your internal communication with your colleagues in different departments and working with other team members? I think those are the type of things that will then help you go from that first step to moving forward, and like under the HR umbrella.
Very good. And how would you find competition in the industry? Is it a fairly competitive industry? Do you find that there's plenty of jobs open for people? It's just finding the right person. What's your general lay of the landscape?
Yeah. So a few things. I think here we're kind of going back to the values again. At least how I run my interviews is that I'm looking for a cultural fit first, right? Like, do they align with the company values, before we even get to like any technical skills, right? Like, they could have all the experience in the world, but if they don't align with the what the company is looking for in terms of that character, then it's probably not going to be a good fit. Um, I would say that now is a good time to be in the HR space, right? Like, with the rise of AI, I think there's a like a high premium placed on people who have strong like a high EQ, good people skills, relationship building. And I think the space is changing quite a bit now because of AI in a post-COVID world, everything that's going on right now. So that is it's an interesting space to be in, but I think a good opportunity for someone who thinks they might be interested in the field.
Very good. And salary expectations for someone, and maybe kind of take this. It's always a tough question to answer because it's going to be locale specific, company specific, things like that.
Yeah.
But I kind of throw it at you from two different ways. One, entry level position. If someone pays you less than X amount, probably better off looking. Do you have a figure of what that number might look like?
So I'm hesitant to put like a hard figure on it. I think that when you're early on in your career, it is, if I could go back, it's important to focus on like where your interests are and where you think you want to take your career, right? Like, salary will come later if you are good at your
Sure.
job. So you don't need to worry about it quite so much at the entry level. So if there's an amazing job that like ticks all the boxes, gives you a lot of opportunities, looks like there's a lot of potential for growth, that's one thing. I would actually look over salary. I look at what is the growth potential within that organization. But let's say they're like a really small nonprofit, so they're probably not going to have like a large budget. It may still be worth, moving into that role. So I would say, just like when a recruiter is looking to find the right fit person for them, I think it's always a two-way conversation, and you should be looking for the company that is the right fit for you. Do they align with your goals and expectations? Do you appreciate and respect and value the people that work within the organization? Do you value and feel you can contribute to the work that that company is doing? I think those are more important factors than what salary level. And also, like, salary is negotiable, right? Like, after
Yeah.
your first year, once you've like proven yourself, you can go in and have a discussion around that.
Very good. And then elevating, seniority level through the career as you progress through. So not C level, but if you say like senior manager level or, a higher stake in the organization, realistically, are people generally looking at, okay, if I'm in this for 20 some years, am I looking at high five figures? Am I crossing the six-figure threshold? What's a realistic, do you think? Again, locale specific, but
Yeah.
generally, is six figures reasonable? Is it high fives? What should people look at?
Yeah, I think it's reasonable. Again, it's just, this is a really, like, this varies so much on so many things, right?
I'm
Experience.
throwing you in a corner.
Yeah, no, I know. Experience level, like location. You also have to look at like the internal policies of a company, like what is
Yeah.
their pay equity structure, all sorts of things. And then you also have to step back and look at I think especially young people always really focus on salary, but there's so much more to compensation than that, right? Like, what does their benefits package look like? What does their retirement
Yeah.
package look like? What does their, PTO time look like? How else do they treat their employees? How do they support them beyond salary?
True. So they can get to six figures.
Yeah, and
Is that what I'm hearing?
it all depends on the company, right? Company
Yeah.
size, that's another big
Yep.
factor. It's I think it's all possible depending on, a mix of all those factors.
Very good. Let's transition out of money a little bit and get into some of the skills. So I think the best way to kind of ask this is, if people who are in this field that tend to be more successful, what are some of those essential skills they either have in common, or if you're looking at them
Mhm.
going into the field, skills that you would recommend they develop and learn now?
Yeah. So I would say things that tend to have in common are, we've touched this one on a lot, but like the high EQ skills, like being able to read a room is really important. So much so that now I do whole like workshops on it when we have interns coming into our program. Knowing how to handle sensitive issues, knowing how to be discreet, relationship building. HR collaborates with every department at an organization, right? So like learning how to partner. So I think that EQ is number one. Number two would probably be like really strong decision making. I think one of the difficult things that you have to do in this role is you can have to balance the um, the individual like emotions and needs of an employee with like the overarching objectives and standards and values of the organization, right? And it's very important to always remember there's a human behind every employee. So at the same time, you have to uphold the standards and the expectations and stay in line with company goals. So I think learning how to balance those two things can be tricky. And so that sound decision making and knowing how to make things fair, sustainable is really important. Making sure everything is driven by your values. And then I would also say strong communication, cultural competence. At Libra, we're a global company, so it's like extra important to like understand different perspectives, know how to communicate properly, be very clear and direct, but always very empathetic. So I would say those are common themes that you see with people in this space. And then maybe something that, something else to focus on, and that people can, start studying up on or getting a better understanding of, or just like, things that have to do with like more of the technical skills, like things that do with compliance, with legal, like all of that overlaps with HR. So that's something that is easily picked up. And these sort of more like these leadership skills and these people skills, I think that's something that comes with the experience over time.
Very good. And how about some of the most challenging parts of the role? So every job is going to have ups and downs. Every position is going to have something that is really, I'd say challenging, but like there's just tough parts and tough days of every job. So what would you classify as maybe some of the most difficult parts of the work?
I think going back to what I said about like remembering there's a human behind every employee. You have to deal with some very personal, sensitive things, right? You're kind of at that intersection where like the personal overlaps with the business. And sometimes it's wonderful because you're helping celebrate an employee, and sometimes you're supporting an employee because they're going through something really difficult, right? Like, or it's just been like a really personal situation, and so you think about, okay, like how do we support this person during this difficult time, and also how do we keep the business moving forward simultaneously. So I think that is one thing. And then also just learning to manage different personalities, right? Like not everyone thinks like you do. There could be some very difficult personalities or people who just think very differently than you, and I think it's wonderful because it brings a lot of richness to an organization when there are a lot of different perspectives, but also you have to learn how to navigate that properly and walk that fine line. And in your role, you always have to be fair, neutral, thinking about like the greater good of the organization, but also still be supportive, respectful to all the employees. So I think that's where that communication piece comes in. You have to not only tell them like what is happening, but also explain to people like why we have a certain policy in place. Why are we taking this decision? And so it takes a lot of active listening, a lot of empathy, and making sure that you're communicating properly so that everyone feels respected no matter what the situation might be.
You find, I'm going to ask you the flip side here in just a minute so you can prepare about some of the most rewarding parts of the career.
Oh, yeah.
But as you were talking there, and I think specifically for your role, you mentioned people have lives behind outside of the office hours, but you are, when things either go really bad, really well, things like that, you obviously get pulled in. Is this a job? I'm going to ask this two different ways and answer however you want. Is it a job that when you leave the office, you can turn off until you get back in the morning? Or is it kind of, I don't say 24/7, but is it one where you should kind of expect after hour things will happen? The other way to ask that is like, is it family friendly? So younger kids don't really think about families as much. They don't think about health issues as much. As you get older, you start thinking about those things. Is it one where you can raise a family and have that flexibility because you're still dealing with people and a lot of different people in an organization?
Yeah, absolutely. This is maybe, one of the biggest reasons why I admire our company and have been with them for so long. Now, we are a family company, so I think that plays into them being very supportive of people with families, working moms. And you're absolutely right. Like when I was younger, I would have never like factored this in, right? To choosing my career. Not until you get older, until you start having your own kids, you have to start thinking about those things. But I would say that this role allows me to have a really healthy blend with my personal life and what drives me in the workspace. They are very understanding. I've had weeks where I have a kid in the hospital, or I have a kid who's really sick at home, and they are incredibly supportive of that. And I think that's one of the great perks of working for like a smaller family organization. Everyone jumps in. They're like, "Don't worry, you focus on this. We'll make it work." And so I think that I've been really happy in that space, and it actually one complements the other in this way. Like, of course, there are hectic weeks and we have a lot of things going on, and if I don't have full control over my schedule, like that makes things really busy. But overall, I would say that my family is what drives me and motivates me to be a better, want to be a better professional. And then this role also, helps me to be a better mom at home as well. So I think it complements in this case.
Excellent answer. Okay, now back to the previous question I promised was coming. What do you find to be the most rewarding aspect of your career, or just working in the industry as a whole?
Yeah. So I think, I think I'll always have a little bit of like a teacher in me, and I find having like a practical, positive impact on someone's life is really rewarding for me, right? So being able to help them in that way, in some way, whether it's helping them nurture a certain skill or help them grow in a certain way. I think the best example or like the most concrete example I can think of is our intern program. We take these young students from all the world, and they come in on the first day and they're a little bit quieter and a little bit unsure of themselves and don't know what to expect. And then throughout the program, we have a really robust curriculum of like professional development and supporting them. And we take on this like advisor role with them. And by the time they leave the program, we've had like 600 people go through the program. Every single one of them has gone through the program and walked away more self-aware, more confident. They've grown. And that to me is super rewarding. And I get some very nice notes and emails, and I always like save them because it means so much. And it's the same for our employees, right? Like if I can help them in some way, if I can move them forward in their career, if I can help them grow their team, if I can help them be better at X, then that is something very tangible to me that motivates me and inspires me, and something I really enjoy about the role.
That's lovely. You mentioned earlier that you love working like with interns, right, in an internship program. So as we start to wind down here, one of the last questions I would have is, are there any trends that you're noticing with, I say younger people, but that's just because I'm old, with new like interns, right? So either those in school or even just new hires that come in. Any trends you're seeing around like expectations? And what I mean by
Yeah.
that is like, are there unrealistic expectations that you are seeing a lot of people have nowadays that maybe they should just get over having, right? So almost I'm asking you for like, hey, for the listeners, can
Yeah.
you offer a cautionary tale to be like, hey, you are expecting this, probably should not be expecting this.
Yeah. No. I love this question, and I am fascinated by Gen Z, and we could have a whole separate podcast on this. But I wouldn't use the word unrealistic expectation, but I do see that there is a bit of a mismatch sometimes, and so that's what my job is like, especially with the internship program. Is my goal is to assimilate them into in our case, like a corporate working professional, what the expectations are. So it's I would advise that, remember, someone who's young, who's entering the workforce, or who's starting an internship, or you're the new person coming onto a team that has already established norms and standards and a way of operating, right? So not saying that it's never going to change, but you can't expect cultural shifts to happen overnight. So you have to come in open-minded. You have to be ready to work hard to first demonstrate your work ethic and your value before like asking for things and expecting things, and take everything as like a learning opportunity. So I think those would be some of my guiding words for them. But I do see a lot of different trends coming in with our younger colleagues, but it's wonderful. This is why I love working with them so much, because just as much as they learn from our guidance and helping them transition kind of from like university life into real working life, I'm learning just as much from them, right? Like, because my job is to build the future workforce of our organization, and so I have to better understand who they are and what their needs and expectations are. And so I find it just as educational on my end.
Yeah, it's a really good point you made at the end there, because you're right. Like people, I always make fun of my parents, right? But we make fun of the older generations. My kids make fun of me. They're like, "You're such an old guy," But you're 100% right. Businesses operate a certain way currently because they've evolved that way. But we can make fun of the younger generation. Those are the people who are working, right? So they are going into the workforce, and at some point they are going to shape that. So it's really a good point you made at the end. I wasn't going to ask this, but I'm going to ask it because I think you're a good person to ask for it. I don't want to say it automatically disqualifies someone, but when you are interviewing, whether it's internship, a full-time role, is there something that someone does that is an immediate red flag? And it could be calling you bro, it could be doing something other. It doesn't have to be language, but is there something common that you kind of find to be a little more trend recently that maybe is a red flag for a hiring manager?
Yeah, I mean, bro would definitely be a flag. No, I would say it depends, right? Like if I'm hiring for like an employee position, I'm probably going to take a slightly different
Sure.
approach to the
That's
interview.
fair.
If it's with an intern, I have maybe more of a let's take this as a learning opportunity approach. And so I will note it if, if they are late, if they are too informal, if they are too casual on how they speak, if they don't come prepared to the interview, right? I actually take notes. And one of the things that we do with our internship program is the program doesn't benefit just all the interns that actually come onto the program and go through it, but we interview like hundreds of students throughout the year, and we offer feedback calls to all of them. So anyone who takes me up on that, I will have a follow-up call with them, and I will say, this is where I think you could do better next time, right? Like, even if they're not moving forward with us, I think even if they're moving on to, other opportunities and they're not a fit for us, I want them to walk away with something of value to them. I want to help them out, right? So I will say next time I recommend that you kind of start with a more formal tone and then mirror the other person's language, or, punctuality is very important. It's not just a pet peeve, but it's like a sign of respect of someone's time. So, that's why that's important. So we do a lot of feedback calls with students because we want them to learn and grow, and I want them to do better. Maybe they just don't know because they don't have the experience. So, yeah, there are flags. Now, if a seasoned 20-year professional came into an interview and called me bro, I would probably go ahead and mark that one as a big red flag.
Fair. Okay, I'm gonna put you on the spot now. This, by the way, I did not expect this interview to go so long, but we're just about wrapped up here. So I appreciate it. I love you that much. Okay, so you give feedback calls. Give me some feedback right now. So I do these things periodically. Give me some feedback on this interview.
Okay, like if you're interviewing for, in what context? You're interviewing for like a position?
This podcast. Like,
okay.
Just give it to me. What could I have done better?
What could you have done better? Warned me about the IT technical difficulties. Oh my God. No. It's difficult to give feedback on the spot without knowing specifically what like the role for. In terms of a podcast, I find this very conversational, very approachable, very relevant. So I think all positive feedback on my end, I would have to sit and think about some constructive feedback to give you, which I always do though. I always do. I always make it a rule of thumb is whenever you're giving feedback, you always, you can give positive, but you always have to give something constructive as well. So I'll have to think about that and send it your way.
Very good. She's punting right now, everyone. By the way, for you IT folks out there, we unplugged it for 45 seconds, plugged it back in, and it worked. Yeah. So we got you covered. All right, Regina, we're wrapping up here. So I'm going to ask you kind of two questions in one, because that's what I do. I ask multiple questions in one, just let you take it. So normally I ask, like, if someone going into this industry, and I think you have probably addressed this already, but someone that wants to go into this field, is there something that no one will ever tell you and you're surprised by, or you kind of wish you knew going in, that you want to tell someone? The other way, or other question you can choose to ask, and just another way to ask it is, did I neglect to ask you anything that you would feel is important for someone who wants to go in this field to know?
Yeah. So for the first one, I would say, I think I was surprised with how personal this role is, right? Like you become very involved with individuals and knowing people as human beings and what they go through. There's a lot of sensitivity needed, and so I didn't expect it to that level. But I also think that that's one of like the beautiful things about this role, right? Because that's where you can also really help people, and you kind of see where you can provide more support to them. It's not all about, just like, oh, here's this great course and become a better professional at X, but how you help them as a person. And sorry, what was the other part was?
Did I neglect to ask you anything that you feel is really important for someone to know?
Yeah, no, I think just what I would want people to know is kind of like don't like take those generalizations about HR, right? Like, especially like modern HR, it's very different than what I feel it probably was several decades ago. And this role is really interesting. It's very strategic. It's linked to the value of the business. It's not just paperwork and administration. Like, yes, you have to do part of that, but I feel that's part of every role in any job out there. This is much more people focused. It's much more about aligning business values with the people you're working for, and how do you get those great people to be even better at their jobs. And then I would also say that there's no like formula, right? Like, you don't need to go and be an HR major and go into HR right away. Like, you can major in a lot of different things and have a lot of different experiences and still move into this type of role, just like I did. So yeah, I think those may be 2 points that
Awesome.
people walk away with.
Well, I love it. Well, Regina, thanks for coming on today. The pleasure having you. If someone wants to reach out, ask you a question about careers, industry, Libra Group, whatever it might be, is there a preferred way for them to get a hold of you?
You can find me on LinkedIn. We also, if there's anything about our internship program, you can email us at info@librainternship.com, and I'll get that message. So those are probably the two quickest ways.
Great. We'll link those things in the show notes. So Regina Sheridan, everyone, Executive Vice President of People and Culture of Libra Group. Hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you want to explore other careers or share yours with us, please check out our website. Until next time, awesome. Go Bills.